For a long, long time, we've basically kept English literature and hard science in two completely different boxes. The arts were for exploring the soul, and science was for explaining the universe. But what if that whole divide was wrong? What if the tools of science could actually unlock the very secrets of storytelling itself? Let's dive in and see how this wild new field is changing, well, pretty much everything we thought we knew about stories.
And this quote from Edward Slingerland, it just nails it, right? On one side, you've got the humanists, swimming in the world of interpretation, culture, and meaning. And on the other, you've got the scientists, dealing in cold, hard empirical facts. For decades, these two groups might as well have been on different planets.
So that brings us to the big question for today. What happens when you take a novel, or a poem, or even a movie script, and you put it under a microscope, just like a biologist would with a cell? And listen, this isn't just some fun thought experiment. It's a full-blown revolution that's happening right now in the world of literary studies.
Now, to really get a handle on this shift, we need to rewind a bit and talk about an idea that's shaped our universities for decades, this concept of the two cultures.
Yeah, the thinking was pretty simple. Literature is all about beauty, emotion, the stuff you can't really measure. It's subjective. Science, on the other hand, is all about the data, about experiments you can repeat, and finding objective truth. And this created this huge gap, a chasm really, that seemed totally impossible to cross.
But then, a really bold new movement popped up, and its goal was to build a bridge right across that chasm. It basically challenged the old way of doing things by asking this radical question: what if literature isn't just about culture? What if it's part of our biology?
And that right there is the core idea. It's called literary Darwinism. And it suggests that to really understand why we tell stories, from ancient myths all the way to the latest Netflix series, we have to look way back into our evolutionary past. The whole argument is that our brains, and by extension our stories, are products of natural selection.
So what's so fascinating here is that even inside this scientific approach, there's a really lively debate going on. On one side, you have the adaptationists. They believe storytelling was literally a survival tool, a way to share crucial information, plan for the future, or just build a stronger tribe. Then on the other side, you've got the byproduct model. People like Steven Pinker have famously called art a kind of cognitive cheesecake. It's not essential for survival, he'd argue, but it's this incredibly pleasurable side effect of other things our brains evolved to do, like using complex language.
This quote is pretty much the foundation of evolutionary psychology, and it's absolutely crucial for understanding literary Darwinism. What it means is that our brains are still wired to solve the problems our ancient ancestors faced, finding food, finding a mate, figuring out who to trust. So the theory goes that the stories that really grab us, even today, are the ones that tap into these ancient, hardwired themes.
Of course, this scientific invasion of literature didn't just happen without a fight. A lot of scholars in the humanities pushed back hard. They argued that this whole approach was way too simplistic and that it kind of missed the entire point of what makes art, well, art.
And this slide really breaks down the argument perfectly. On the left, you've got the Darwinist claim that storytelling was a vital adaptation. But on the right, you see the counterargument. Look, if all you needed to do was share survival tips or plan a hunt, you don't need a whole epic poem. As the critics point out, just being able to say "what if" using language, that would have gotten the job done much, much more efficiently.
And this is a really sharp criticism. It's borrowing a term from the great Stephen Jay Gould. A just-so story is basically a nice-sounding, plausible explanation for why something evolved, but one that's almost impossible to actually prove or disprove. So critics say that claiming literature evolved to, say, promote group cohesion, well, it sounds good, but how do you find real hard evidence for that from tens of thousands of years ago?
The pushback also gets political. Critics like Robert Young started asking, is this hunt for human universals in storytelling actually becoming a new kind of white mythology? In other words, is it a Western scientific idea that's being imposed on the whole world, ignoring the incredible diversity of different cultures? The big question they raise is, does reducing every great work of art to simple themes of survival and reproduction really do it justice, or does it just flatten all of its cultural richness?
So, okay, we've got a conflict. A scientific challenge on one side, a humanist pushback on the other. But the story doesn't end in a fight. A much more nuanced, much more collaborative approach started to emerge, one that sees this connection not as a hostile takeover, but as a two-way street.
This idea is called consilience, basically the unity of all knowledge. Now, the first wave, led by the scientist E.O. Wilson, felt to a lot of humanists like a push, like science was just going to absorb the humanities. But the second wave is completely different.
It calls for a consilience of equal regard. And here's the bottom line. Scientists are realizing they actually need humanists. When you're a scientist studying something as complex as human culture or narrative, you need that deep contextual knowledge that humanities scholars have spent their lives building. They help you frame the right questions and make sense of the data. It's not a takeover anymore. It's a real partnership.
And this partnership, it isn't just a theory. Let's shift gears and see how this collaboration is already being used to decode our subconscious reactions in the real world. This is where we go from narrative theory to applied science.
And welcome to the world of neuroagile marketing. This is where all that deep literary theory meets the marketplace. Think of it as taking the science of story, understanding how things like plot and character trigger real responses in the brain, and applying it to the super fast-paced world of marketing and management.
And just look at the tools they're using. With an EEG, they can track your cognitive load. Is this ad clear or is it confusing you? With eye tracking, they can see what you actually look at, not just what you say you looked at. An fMRI can show which parts of your brain are lighting up, which means you're deeply engaged with a story. And facial coding, that can catch those tiny little micro-expressions that give away how you really feel subconsciously. It's all about measuring a story's impact on a biological level. Okay, check out this real-world example. A beverage company was getting ready to launch a new bottle design. In the focus groups, everyone said, "Yeah, we like it, it's great." But when they did EEG scans, they found a profound negative emotional response. People said one thing, but their brains were feeling the complete opposite. This is the difference between asking someone what they think and measuring how a story actually makes them feel. And in this case, it saved that company from a massively expensive mistake.
So, after all that, where are we? We've gone from the dusty halls of literary theory all the way to the high-tech labs of neuroscience. It feels like we're really starting to decode the very biology of our stories.
The big picture here is a total paradigm shift. Studying literature isn't just about interpretation anymore. It's becoming this incredible nexus point, a deep dive into the evolved biological and neurological machinery that makes us the storytelling animal in the first place.
So let's just quickly recap the journey. Those old walls between science and the humanities, they're finally starting to crumble. We're now exploring the deep evolutionary roots of literature. We've seen how this convergence has created these incredibly powerful real-world tools. And of course, it also forces us to ask some really critical questions about ethics, privacy, and the power of influence.
And that leaves us with one last huge question. As we get better and better at decoding the science of storytelling, as we turn the story into a specimen and unlock its biological secrets, we gain this unbelievable predictive power. But in our quest to understand the mechanics of the human heart, is there a chance we might lose just a little bit of its magic?